Keanu Reeves sat alone at a corner table in a small, old-fashioned diner just off the highway. It was late evening, the orange glow of sunset peeking through the dusty blinds. He had come here without telling anyone. No entourage, no cameras. He just wanted a hot meal and a few minutes where no one expected him to be a hero, a star, or anything more than a tired man with an empty stomach. The smell of sizzling steak and fresh coffee filled the air, mixing with faint music from the old jukebox in the corner. It reminded him of simpler days when he would sit with his mother in tiny restaurants like this. Long before he was known to the world, he noticed the waitress as soon as she approached. She looked young but carried the tired weight of someone. Older, her uniform was too big, sleeves rolled up, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. When she smiled, it didn't quite reach her eyes. Keanu watched her hands tremble as she poured him a glass of water. He wondered if she recognized him, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she looked at the floor when she spoke, her voice soft like she was afraid someone might hear. "What can I get you?" she asked, her eyes flicking up to meet his for the briefest moment. Keanu ordered a medium-rare steak with mashed potatoes and a side of green beans. Nothing fancy, just a warm meal that might make him feel human again. As the waitress scribbled down his order, he felt an odd heaviness in the air. He noticed the bruise on her wrist, faint but there. She caught him looking and quickly pulled her sleeve down. He wanted to ask, but something in her expression stopped him. He knew that look, the look of someone hiding a story too painful to share with a stranger. He nodded instead, forcing a smile, hoping it would give her some small comfort. While he waited, he stared out the window at the cars passing by. His mind drifted to memories of nights like this when he was younger, working long hours, saving every penny to support his family. He knew how hard life could break you, how sometimes you wore your smile like a mask because the truth was too heavy to carry in public. He felt the weight of the waitress's silent pain pressing into his own. Old scars. The diner was nearly empty. An older couple sat at the other end, speaking in hushed tones. A man in a suit scrolled endlessly on his phone, his coffee untouched. The hum of the refrigerator and the soft clatter of dishes filled the quiet spaces between. Every now and then, the waitress would glance at Keanu, then quickly look away. He wondered what she was thinking. Did she know who he was? Did she care? He almost hoped she didn't. When she brought his steak, she set the plate down so carefully it barely made a sound. He looked up to thank her, but she didn't meet his eyes this time. Instead, she slipped a folded napkin beside his plate, her hand shaking, her breath caught like she was about to say something. But then she straightened up and walked away so quickly she almost stumbled. Keanu felt a chill run down his spine. He stared at the napkin, untouched beside the glistening steak. The diner seemed to grow quieter, like the world was holding its breath with him. He glanced around. No one was watching. He reached out and unfolded the napkin with cautious fingers. Inside, on the thin paper, was a note written in hurried, shaky handwriting that made his heart drop to the floor. It read, "Please help me. He is watching me. Don't let him see you read this." Keanu's single quotes pulse thundered in his ears. He looked up, trying not to move too fast, pretending to cut into his steak as his eyes searched the diner. Who was he? His eyes landed on the man in the suit, the one who hadn't touched his coffee. The man was staring right at him now, unblinking, like he knew. Keanu felt a knot tighten in his chest. He felt anger, but under that was something colder. Fear for this young woman who had risked so much to slip him this note. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. He was just an actor, after all. People expected him to be brave in movies, but this was real. But then he remembered the stories his mother told him about standing up even when your legs shook, about kindness being the strongest weapon you could carry. He folded the napkin and tucked it into his pocket. He forced himself to look calm, to chew his food like nothing had happened. Inside, his mind raced. How could he help her? Should he call the police? But what if it made things worse? What if this man hurt her before help arrived? Keanu felt his hands clench under the table. He knew he couldn't walk away, not tonight, not when someone needed him more than he needed to disappear. He saw her behind the counter, trying to steady her breath, wiping down the same spot over and over. Her eyes met his for just a second, wide, pleading. Keanu gave her the smallest nod, hoping she would see the promise in it. A promise that he would not leave this diner until she was safe. He didn't know how yet, but he knew he would find a way, even if it meant putting himself in danger. He would not be the man who turned away when someone asked for help. In that moment, Keanu realized something. Sometimes heroes are not the ones with the biggest muscles or the loudest voices. Sometimes they are just people who refuse to look away when someone whispers for help. He picked up his fork, took another bite of steak, and quietly made a plan. He would watch, he would wait, and when the moment came, he would stand between that waitress and whatever darkness was following her. The man in the suit sipped his coffee now, his eyes still locked on Keanu. The waitress disappeared into the back room. Keanu felt the weight of the note in his pocket, the words burning like a fire against his chest. He took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "Not tonight, not on my watch." And somewhere deep inside, the tired man who just wanted a hot meal turned into something stronger. He was ready. The night was far from over. Keanu Reeves sat perfectly still, fork in hand, as the taste of steak turned to ash in his mouth. The words on that napkin kept echoing in his head. "Please help me. He is watching me." Every time he looked up, the man in the suit stared back, never blinking, never looking away. It felt like a silent threat stretched tight across the empty diner. Keanu's mind played out different endings, some good, some terrible, but each one began with the same truth. He could not leave her alone with that man. He shifted in his seat, trying to look casual, hoping the man would lose interest. But the man stayed frozen like a statue, only his eyes moving, flicking between Keanu and the kitchen door where the waitress had disappeared. Keanu's thoughts raced back through old scenes in his life, the nights he'd walked dark streets, alone, the times strangers had shown him small kindnesses when he was a nobody, the words his mother used to whisper in his ear when fear gripped him too tightly, "Be gentle, but never weak." Tonight, those words were the only armor he had. He looked around the diner again. The old couple was gone now, their seats empty. The man in the suit was no longer pretending. His eyes were sharp, cold, like he was waiting for Keanu to make the first move. Keanu felt anger bubble up in his chest, but he knew anger wouldn't help the waitress. He needed to be smart, calm. He forced himself to take another bite of steak, though his hands trembled just slightly on the fork. If the man saw that, he didn't show it. He just kept staring, a ghost behind a mask. The bell above the diner door jingled. For a moment, Keanu's heart leapt. Maybe someone new would come in, a family, a group, anyone to break this tension. But no one came through. It was just the wind outside, pushing the door slightly before it clicked shut again. Keanu's eyes darted to the kitchen door. He wished he could see her face, know she was safe for now. He wondered what story lay behind her eyes, what pain she was hiding, the bruise on her wrist, the tired slump of her shoulders. They all told him this was not just a night. This was her life. Keanu reached for his phone under the table, fingers brushing the screen. He thought about calling the police, but he imagined sirens, flashing lights, the man in the suit grabbing her before they could get here. He pictured her paying the price for his mistake. He needed another plan, something quiet, something fast. He put the phone down, mind turning every angle. He knew how to pretend. Years of acting taught him how to hide 1,000 truths behind a single look. Maybe tonight, that skill would save them both. The kitchen door swung open just a crack. The waitress peeked out, her eyes darting toward Keanu, then the man in the suit. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She disappeared again, but Keanu understood. She was waiting for him to do something. The weight of that trust pressed hard against his chest. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing slow. Be gentle but never weak. He needed help, someone on his side. He looked over at the counter. The cook, a big man with a stained apron, was scrubbing the grill. Did he know? Did he care? Keanu wondered how deep this ran. Was the cook her friend or her enemy? There was no way to know. Keanu pushed his plate aside and stood up slowly. The man in the suit stiffened, his eyes narrowing. Keanu forced a casual, Stretch, rolling his shoulders like a man too tired to be dangerous, he walked toward the counter, every step echoing in the quiet diner. He felt the man's eyes burning holes into his back. He leaned over the counter and caught the cook's eye. The cook barely looked up. His face was rough, lined with years of hard work. Keanu's voice came out soft, like he was asking about the weather. "Hey, your waitress okay? She seems scared." The cook froze for a second, then scrubbed harder at the grill. He didn't look up. "Best you eat your food and leave, friend," he said, his tone flat like cold steel. "Ain't your business." Keanu felt a chill run down his spine. He realized in that moment that he could trust no one here but himself. The cook knew, but fear had chained him too. Maybe he'd seen the same suit and the same cold eyes, and decided it was safer to pretend nothing was wrong. Keanu didn't blame him, but he also didn't care. He would not pretend, not tonight. He walked back to his table, his mind spinning faster now. He needed to get her out. He needed a distraction. He spotted the old jukebox in the corner. Maybe, just maybe, noise would help. He dropped a few coins into the slot. The machine hummed to life, gears grinding. Then an old song crackled through the speakers. The soft melody of a love song filled the empty spaces, bouncing off the walls. The man in the suit shifted, annoyed. Good. Keanu turned his back to the man, pretending to flip through song options. But he was really watching the reflection in the glass. He saw the waitress slip back out, standing by the kitchen door, her eyes wide, one hand behind her back like she was ready to run. Keanu caught her gaze in the reflection. He mouthed the word bathroom and nodded his head toward the hallway. She hesitated, looking like a bird about to flee a cage. Then she nodded, too. She disappeared down the hallway, and Keanu knew he had only seconds to act. He turned, met the eyes of the man in the suit, and forced a crooked smile. "Bathroom break," he said, voice calm like they were old friends sharing a meal. The man's lips curled into a fake grin, but his eyes stayed dead. Keanu felt the weight of every step as he walked past, heading down the hallway where the flickering restroom sign glowed dimly. When he reached the door, he didn't knock. He pushed inside and found the waitress leaning against the sink, breathing hard, her eyes wet with unshed tears. "He will kill me if he knows I talked to you," she whispered, voice shaking. "Please, please don't tell him, you know." Keanu stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "Listen to me. You are not alone anymore. You understand? You're not alone." She shook her head, covering her mouth to stop a sob. "He has my little brother. He said he'll hurt him if I ever run. I tried before. He always finds me. He always." Keanu felt his chest tighten. This was bigger than he thought. He needed her trust, needed her strength. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Emma," she said through her tears. "Emma, my name is Keanu, and I promise you, I will not let him touch you or your brother again. But you have to be strong. Can you do that for me?" Emma nodded, wiping her tears with her sleeve. "What do we do?" Keanu glanced at the cracked bathroom window, just big enough for someone small to crawl through. "We run," he said, "but not through the front door. I want you to go out the window. Go now. Hide behind the dumpster out back. Wait for me there. Don't move until I come get you, understand?" Emma's eyes widened with fear, but also a spark of hope. "What about you?" Keanu smiled, a quiet, tired smile that held a promise stronger than steel. "I'll handle him. You just trust me, Emma." She took a shaky breath, climbed onto the sink, and pushed the window open. The cold night air rushed in, carrying with it a fragile hope. She slipped out, one leg at a time, disappearing into the darkness. Keanu stood alone in the small bathroom, the old pipes rattling behind the walls. He stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror. His own eyes looked back, not the tired actor who came here for a steak, but a man who had decided he would not look away. He turned the faucet on, splashed cold water on his face, and straightened up. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. When he stepped back into the hallway, the jukebox song was still playing, softer now, like a heartbeat echoing through the lonely diner. The man in the suit stood in the hallway waiting for him, blocking his way back. "Where is she?" the man asked, voice low, venom dripping from every word. Keanu didn't flinch. He stared straight into those dead eyes, feeling the fire grow inside him. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said calmly, his fists curling at his sides. The man smiled, but it was the kind of smile that chilled your bones. "Wrong answer, movie star." Keanu braced himself as the hallway seemed to close in around them. He knew what was coming, but he was ready. For her, for Emma, for every soul who had ever whispered for help and felt ignored. He was ready to fight. And this was just the beginning. Keanu Reeves stood his ground in that narrow hallway, facing the man in the suit. The humming jukebox in the diner beyond seemed miles away, its soft tune now like a distant heartbeat keeping time with Keanu's own racing pulse. The man's cold eyes didn't blink, didn't flinch. His hands hung loose at his sides, but there was something about the way his fingers twitched that made Keanu's instincts scream. This man was ready to snap, to turn violence into an art. Keanu remembered the hundreds of fight scenes he'd acted out on screen, the choreographed punches, the staged grunts, the safety pads hidden under clothes. But this was no movie, this was real. And he knew that every move he made had to protect Emma, waiting in the shadows behind the diner. He couldn't mess this up. He forced himself to breathe slowly, keeping his face calm like he hadn't just sent the waitress out a bathroom window and into a night that might free her, if he could hold this monster here just long enough. The man took a step closer, and Keanu smelled stale cologne mixed with cigarette smoke. "You think you're a hero," the man sneered, his voice like oil dripping from an old pipe. "She's nothing, just a dumb girl who doesn't know her place. You shouldn't have got involved, Reeves." Keanu's jaw clenched at the way he said her name, like she was just a thing. He looked past the man, making sure the hallway was still clear. There was only one exit, the diner behind him, but Keanu knew if Emma made a run for it now, the man would hear. So he had to hold him here, make him stay, keep his attention. "You can walk away right now," Keanu said softly, almost a calm. "Let her go, I promise you. You don't want to do this with me." The man laughed, an ugly sound that echoed in the tight space. "You think you scare me, you're just an actor, a sad old man playing dress up as a hero. But heroes die too." The next moment happened so fast that Keanu's body moved before his mind could catch up. The man lunged forward, his hand flashing with something silver, a small blade. The hallway lights flickered as Keanu dodged. Sideways, the knife grazing his arm, slicing through fabric and skin. The pain flared hot, but it was nothing compared to the fire that roared up inside him. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisting it until the blade clattered to the floor, the metal ringing out like a tiny alarm bell. They struggled, slamming into the wall, feet scuffling on the cheap linoleum tiles. The man was stronger than he looked, a weary strength born from desperation and cruelty. But Keanu held tight, forcing the man's arm up, pinning him back. Every breath Keanu took tasted like sweat and fear and something older, deeper, the memory of his mother telling him that when you fight for someone else, you're stronger than you ever know. But the man slammed his knee into Keanu's side, knocking the air out of him. They tumbled into the diner, crashing against the counter. Plates rattled and a coffee cup fell, shattering on the floor. The cook, who had been pretending not to see, backed away slowly, eyes wide with the terror of a man who knew he was already too late to help. The man broke free, grabbing Keanu by the collar, his fist connecting hard with Keanu's jaw. Pain exploded through Keanu's head, but he didn't let go. He pushed back, using the weight of his body to slam the man against the counter. They were so close Keanu could see the dark veins in the man's eyes, the twisted satisfaction that came from hurting others. Keanu felt his blood boil. "She's gone," Keanu growled through gritted teeth. "You'll never find her." The man froze, a flash of rage breaking through his mask. "What did you do?" Keanu saw it then, the fear under the man's cruelty, the loss of control. He knew people like this thrived on fear, on keeping others small and silent. But when you take away their power, they fall apart. He pushed harder, his arm pressing into the man's throat just enough to keep him pinned. He felt his own cut bleeding down his sleeve, warm and sticky. The cook stood nearby, eyes darting between the two of them. Keanu looked at him, voice low but firm. "Call the police, now." The cook hesitated, then grabbed the phone off the wall. His hands shook so badly the receiver almost slipped from his grip. Keanu could hear him stammering to the operator, words spilling out in broken pieces. "Fight in the diner. Man with a knife, help. Please help." The man beneath him snarled, spitting curses. His strength surged in one last push, throwing Keanu off balance. They both crashed into a table, chairs skidding across the floor. The man scrambled for the knife, his fingers wrapping around the handle just as Keanu lunged again. They struggled on the floor, the knife blade glinting between them. Keanu felt its cold edge nick his skin again, but he tightened his grip, forcing the man's wrist down, inch by inch. Every muscle in Keanu's body screamed. He thought of Emma crouched behind that dumpster, waiting for him. He thought of every person who ever said it's not my problem and how wrong they were. He would not let this monster win. With a final burst of strength, Keanu slammed the man's wrist against the floor. The knife clattered away again, spinning under the counter. The man howled in pain, but before he could move, Keanu drove his fist into his jaw once, twice, until the man went limp, his head lolling to the side. Keanu staggered to his feet, chest heaving, blood dripping down his arm. The cook was still on the phone, shouting for the police to hurry. Keanu leaned against the counter, catching his breath. The man lay unconscious at his feet, a pathetic pile of cheap suit and dead threats. The door of the diner swung open suddenly, the bell above jingling in a harsh, broken rhythm. Two police officers stormed in, their hands on their weapons. They took one look at Keanu, at the bleeding man on the floor, and then at the cook, who pointed wordlessly at the mess. Keanu raised his hands, palms open, voice hoarse. "She's outside. The waitress. She needs help. Please, get her." The officers moved fast. One of them stayed with Keanu, asking him quick questions. Who he was, what happened, did he need an ambulance? Keanu barely heard him. His mind was outside, with Emma, hoping she was still waiting, hoping she hadn't run off into the dark in terror. Minutes felt like hours. Then the second officer returned, his hand gently guiding Emma through the door. Her eyes were wide, cheeks streaked with tears, but when she saw Keanu, she broke into a sob that shattered the quiet. She ran to him, hugging him so tightly it almost knocked the breath out of him. He winced at the pain in his side, but didn't care. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her steady, like an anchor in a storm. "You did it," she whispered. I thought he'd kill you." Keanu shook his head, his voice rough but steady. "Not tonight, Emma, not tonight." The officers led the man in the suit away in handcuffs, his head hanging low. No more threats left in him. The cook sank into a booth, burying his face in his hands, the weight of his fear finally breaking free. Emma clung to Keanu, her sobs softening into quiet breaths. Keanu felt the pain in his jaw, the cut on his arm, the bruises blooming under his skin, but none of it mattered. He had kept his promise. He had not looked away. He had not walked out that door and left her behind. In that small, lonely diner, with the broken jukebox still playing its final notes, Keanu Reeves realized something deep in his bones. Sometimes the greatest roles you play are not on a screen, but in the quiet moments when someone needs you to stand up, to fight back, to believe in something better. And though he was tired, so tired, he knew this story was far from over, because outside these walls, another story was waiting to be told. The story of how Emma would find her freedom, her brother, and a life worth living. And Keanu would be there, every step of the way. Keanu Reeves sat in the back of the ambulance, with Emma beside him. The cold air stung his open cuts as the paramedic cleaned the dried blood on his arm and jaw. The flashing red and blue lights bounced off the diner windows, turning the quiet parking lot into a scene that felt unreal, like a dream that had been waiting years to wake up. Emma's hands trembled in her lap, her eyes fixed on the ground. But every few seconds she would glance up at Keanu, as if to remind herself he was still there, that he hadn't disappeared into the night like every other promise in her life. The police had taken the man in the suit away. The cook sat on the curb, head in his hands, staring at the pool of coffee that had spilled during the fight, like it was the only thing that made sense anymore. Officers moved around, talking to witnesses who hadn't really seen anything but would tell the story for days. How a movie star got into a fight in their sleepy diner. How a girl with bruises on her wrist walked away free for the first time. In Forever. Keanu winced as the paramedic pressed a bandage against the cut on his arm. The pain was sharp, but he welcomed it. It reminded him this was real. This wasn't a script he could toss aside when the cameras stopped rolling. This was a life, Emma's life. And the fight was far from over. "What about your brother?" Keanu asked softly, turning to her. His voice was gentle, but under it was an urgency that made her look at him fully, her tired eyes holding a glimmer of something new, hope, maybe. "He's at an old house," she whispered. "They keep him there when I work. They say if I ever run, they'll hurt him, or worse." Keanu felt anger burn in his chest. The man in the suit was gone, but Emma's fear stayed behind like a ghost in her bones. He looked at the officer who stood nearby, taking notes. "She needs to get her brother. Now, you can't just let him stay with them." The officer, a young man who looked too fresh to have seen the worst parts of people, nodded, eyes serious. "We'll get him out, we promise." But Keanu could see the doubt flicker behind his polite words. He'd been around enough to know promises were easy to make when the cold night was winding down, and everyone wanted to go home. But this wasn't over when they drove away. This was Emma's every day, and Keanu wouldn't let her face it alone. "Emma," he said, turning back to her, "you trust me, right?" She hesitated, her hands twisting in her lap. Then she nodded, a single small movement that cost her everything she had left. "Then listen to me. You don't go back there, not ever. I'll make sure you and your brother are safe tonight, tomorrow. Whatever it takes. Do you understand?" Emma's eyes filled with tears that she didn't bother to hide. She reached out, gripping his hand, her fingers cold and fragile against his. "Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me." Keanu felt a lump in his throat. He thought of the nights he'd been alone, the strangers who gave him kindness when they didn't have to, the times when one gentle word had been the thing that stopped him from falling apart. "Because someone has to," he said, "and tonight, that someone is me." The paramedic closed up his kit, gave Keanu a quiet nod, and stepped away. The officer came closer, asking Emma to repeat her brother's location, taking careful notes. Every word she spoke seemed to steal pieces of her strength, but Keanu squeezed her hand, letting her know she didn't have to carry it alone anymore. When they finally let them leave the ambulance, Keanu guided Emma to his car. She looked so small beside him under the harsh glow of the streetlight. The diner behind them was quiet again, just another late-night stop on an empty highway. But Keanu knew they'd both remember it forever. He opened the passenger door for her, helping her in gently like she might break if he let go. They drove through the night in silence for a while. The road stretched out ahead, dark and empty except for the hum of the tires and the occasional distant headlights of passing cars. Keanu kept glancing at her, making sure she was still awake, still there. She leaned her head against the window, eyes half closed but never fully at rest. "Tell me about your brother," Keanu said softly, trying to keep her grounded. She let out a shaky breath. "His name is Caleb. He's 12. He loves comic books. He always makes up stories about superheroes. He says one day he'll be strong enough to save me." Her voice cracked, and she pressed her fist against her mouth to stop the sob that wanted to break free. Keanu reached over, his fingers brushing hers. "Emma, he doesn't have to save you. You're saving him. You're stronger than you know." They drove for another hour. Guided by the directions she whispered between shaky breaths. When they pulled off the main road, they found themselves on a dirt track that led to a rundown farmhouse. Hidden behind a line of dead trees, the house looked abandoned at first glance. Broken shutters, overgrown weeds, a sagging porch that creaked in the wind. But the faint glow of a single light in the upstairs window told the truth. Someone was inside. Keanu parked a little way down the road, killing the headlights. They sat in the darkness, the engine ticking as it cooled, the silence thick with fear and possibility. "Stay here," he said firmly. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me." Emma's hand shot out, grabbing his sleeve. "Please be careful. They're dangerous. It's not just him. There are more." Keanu nodded. He didn't say he was scared. He was, but he also knew he wouldn't back down now. I'll get Caleb. We'll all leave together. Trust me, Emma. She let him go, her fingers trembling as she pressed the lock button down. He slipped out into the cold night, pulling his hood up to hide his face. The dirt crunched under his boots as he moved toward the house, keeping low, his eyes darting between the broken fences and dark windows. Each step felt heavier than the last, but his mind was clear, every heartbeat echoing the promise he'd made. As he reached the porch, he heard voices inside, low, angry, like old snakes coiled around secrets. He crept closer to a cracked window, peering in. Inside, the living room was filthy, trash bags, old pizza boxes, a single bulb swinging from a frayed wire. Two men sat at a battered table, arguing over money, oblivious to the boy curled up in the corner on a threadbare blanket. Caleb, small, pale, eyes open but empty, staring at the stained wall like he'd been staring at it forever. Keanu felt a wave of rage and sorrow crash through him. He remembered being that boy, alone in a cold room, wishing someone would come and take him away. He wouldn't let Caleb stay here one more night. He slipped around the back, finding a side door slightly ajar. He pushed it open just enough to squeeze through, his feet silent on the cracked linoleum. The two men kept arguing, drunk on their own bitterness, not even noticing the shadow moving along the wall. When Keanu reached Caleb, he crouched down, putting a finger to his lips. The boy's eyes widened, hope flickering for the first time in years. Keanu leaned in close, his voice barely a breath. I'm here to take you to your sister. Can you be brave for me? Caleb nodded, too scared to speak. Keanu scooped him up gently, the boy's small arms wrapping around his neck like he'd been waiting for this all his life. Keanu stood, shifting his weight so he wouldn't make a sound. But then the floorboard creaked, just once, loud as a gunshot in the dead night. One of the men turned, eyes narrowing. What the hell? Keanu didn't wait. He bolted for the door, Caleb clinging to him like a lifeline. The men shouted, chairs crashing to the floor, footsteps pounding after them. Keanu hit the porch, steps hard, his feet slipping on the loose boards, but he held on tight to Caleb. They stumbled into the yard, the night air biting against his cuts and bruises. Behind him, the men spilled out onto the porch, cursing, yelling threats that sounded like poison. A gunshot cracked through the dark, the bullet splintering the old fence inches from Keanu's side. He ducked, shielding Caleb with his own body as he sprinted down the dirt track toward the car. In the distance, he saw the headlights flick on Emma, brave and terrified, ready to open the door for her brother. Keanu pushed his legs harder, his breath ragged in his throat, the pounding of boots behind him growing louder. But he didn't stop. He wouldn't stop. Not tonight. Not for anything. Keanu Reeves ran through the cold night, Caleb clinging to him like a tiny heartbeat pressed against his chest. Every step pounded through his bruised ribs, each breath scraped his throat raw. But he didn't slow down. The shouts behind him grew fainter for a moment, then closer again. Like shadows that refused to break in the dark, the dirt road felt endless, lined with gnarled trees that seemed to twist closer, branches clawing at the night sky. Emma was there, standing outside the car, the passenger door wide open. The look on her face, a raw mix of fear and love, almost brought Keanu to his knees. But there was no time for relief, not yet. He reached the car, pushed Caleb gently into his sister's arms. The boy buried his face against Emma's neck, his small shoulders shaking. Emma held him tight, whispering words only he could hear, her tears falling onto his hair. Get in the car, Emma. Lock the doors, Keanu ordered, voice low but fierce. Emma's eyes darted behind him. What about you? Keanu glanced back. Two men stumbled down the dirt path, shouting, their steps clumsy with rage. A flash of silver caught the moonlight. A knife again, or maybe worse. Keanu slammed the car door shut, knocking twice on the window. Drive if you have to. Don't look back. You hear me? Emma's mouth opened to protest. But the words died when she saw the look in his eyes, calm, tired, unbreakable. She nodded, her trembling hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. Keanu turned to face the darkness. The two men slowed as they saw him standing alone in the beam of the car's headlights, his shadow stretched across the dirt, long and thin like a scar on the earth. One man spat on the ground. The other twirled the knife between his fingers. "Give the kid back." The man with the knife snarled, "This ain't your business." Keanu felt a bitter laugh scratch at the back of his throat. How many times had he heard that? "This ain't your business." As if kindness had limits. As if decency needed permission. He took a slow step forward, his fists tightening at his sides. He could feel every bruise, every cut, but he didn't care. Pain meant nothing when someone needed him to stand. "Go home," Keanu said, his voice steady as stone. "It's over." The man with the knife lunged first, a clumsy, desperate swipe at Keanu's side. Keanu stepped aside just in time, grabbing the man's wrist, twisting it so hard the knife fell into the dirt. The second man swung at Keanu's back, his fist slamming into Keanu's ribs. White-hot pain flared, but Keanu didn't go down. He shoved the first man away, turned, and caught the second by the collar, dragging him into the light. He saw the man's face then, young, eyes red, teeth gritted like a cornered dog. Keanu didn't punch him. Instead, he held him there, his eyes burning into the young man's fear. "Walk away. You don't have to do this. You can choose." "Better." For a second, the young man's eyes wavered. Then he ripped free, shoving Keanu back. But the fight was gone from him. He turned and ran down the path, disappearing into the shadows like he'd never been there at all. The first man, the one with the knife, scrambled to his feet, rage twisting his mouth into an ugly snarl. He grabbed for the blade, but Keanu kicked it away. The man lunged again, fists flying. Keanu felt each punch land, pain blooming like sparks behind his eyes, but he stayed up. He blocked the next blow, swung his elbow into the man's jaw, felt bone connect. The man stumbled. Dazed, Keanu grabbed him by the collar, dragging him close enough to smell the stale stink of fear. "You're done," Keanu hissed. "You'll never touch them again." The man spat blood, trying to snarl some threat, but Keanu shoved him back. The man fell hard, hitting the dirt with a thud. Keanu stood over him, chest heaving, every muscle trembling with exhaustion and something fiercer, the raw promise that he would not let darkness win tonight. A sudden sound behind him made Keanu spin around, but it was only Emma, opening the car door. She ran to him, Caleb close behind her, his tiny hand clutching his sister's shirt like a lifeline. Emma's eyes were huge in the dark, glinting with tears and fear and something he hadn't seen before, trust, unshakable. "And hold out single quotes, Keanu. Come on," she begged. "Please, let's just go." Keanu looked at the man in the dirt, who moaned and rolled onto his side. He knew the fight was done, for tonight, at least. He turned back to Emma and Caleb, his shoulders slumping as the last bit of adrenaline drained away. He stumbled to the car, Caleb's tiny voice reaching him through the haze. "Are you okay, mister?" Keanu managed a tired smile, ruffling the boy's hair. "I will be, kid. Thanks to you." Emma helped him into the back seat, her hands gentle on his bruised ribs. She climbed into the driver's seat, Caleb curled up in the middle, his small body pressed against Keanu's side. The boy's head rested on Keanu's arm, trusting him completely without a word. Keanu felt a sting behind his eyes, but he blinked it back. No tears now, not until they were safe. Emma turned the key, the engine rumbling to life, the headlights swept over the dirt road, catching the man on the ground one last time. Keanu didn't look back. He let the night swallow the past behind them. The car rolled forward, bumping over potholes, faster, farther away from that house of nightmares. For a long time, no one spoke. The road stretched out ahead, dark but open, like a promise waiting to be kept. Emma's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, her hands steady on the wheel. Caleb drifted off against Keanu's side, the soft, even rhythm of his breathing more comforting than any words. Keanu stared out the window, watching the trees blur by. His body ached, his cuts stung, but none of it mattered. What mattered was the warmth of Caleb's small weight against him. What mattered was Emma glancing at him through the rearview mirror, her lips trembling as she whispered a single word that cracked open his tired heart. Thank you. Keanu shook his head slowly. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. We'll find somewhere safe. You won't ever go back. I promise, Emma nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek as the first hint of dawn touched the edge of the sky. She didn't say anything more. She didn't need to. The car sped on through the fading night, carrying 3 people who had nothing left to lose and everything left to find. The first soft light of dawn crept over the horizon as the car rolled down a quiet highway. Far from the broken diner, the farmhouse, and every dark memory Emma and Caleb had left behind. Keanu Reeves sat in the back seat with Caleb's head resting in his lap. The boy slept so deeply, his small hands curled up like he was finally safe enough to dream. Keanu watched the rising sun wash the road ahead in gold, each mile taking them farther from fear and closer to something better. Emma's knuckles still gripped the steering wheel tight, but her shoulders had lowered, the weight of years slowly slipping off her back. She glanced at Keanu through the mirror every few minutes, as if to make sure he was still there, like the nightmare would grab them back if she let herself believe too much. Keanu understood. Trust was not a thing you could snap into place overnight. It had to grow, like dawn pushing out the dark. They drove in silence for a while. Keanu could feel every bruise blooming under his shirt, each shallow cut throbbing with his heartbeat. But the pain felt distant. It was just proof he had not turned away, proof he had stood when he could have run. That was all that mattered now. Every time Caleb stirred in his sleep, Keanu rested a gentle hand on his shoulder to remind him he was not alone anymore. Where are we going? Emma finally asked, her voice thin but steady, like she had repeated the question in her head 1,000 times before daring to speak it out loud. Keanu leaned forward, his words calm and certain. Somewhere safe. I know a place. A friend up north who runs a small place for people starting over. No questions asked. No one will find you there. You'll get new names if you want. Work. A chance to breathe. Emma's eyes glistened in the rearview mirror, tears gathering but not falling. Why are you doing this? You could have left me in that diner. You don't owe me anything. Keanu shook his head slowly, his hand brushing Caleb's hair out of his eyes. Someone once did the same for me. Maybe not like this, but close enough. I know what it means when someone looks at you and says you matter. I won't let you forget that. Emma's lips trembled. She turned her eyes back to the road, blinking hard. He always told me nobody would ever help me. He said I was nothing. Keanu felt his jaw clench, not at her words, but at the echo of all the people who ever believed those lies. He was wrong. He's gone. And you are not nothing, Emma. You're more than you know. Look at what you did tonight. You fought for your brother. You found a way to speak when you were told to stay silent. You are stronger than he will ever be. Emma let out a shaky breath, the tears finally falling, warm and quiet down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. She let them roll as the car hummed along the empty road, the dawn unfolding around them like a promise. After a while, Caleb woke up, blinking sleep from his eyes. He sat up, squinting at the morning light. His hand found his sister's shoulder. First, then he looked at Keanu, a small, tired grin spreading across his face. Did we get away? Keanu smiled back, a spark of warmth breaking through his weariness. We did. Caleb, you're free now. Both of you. The boy's eyes grew wide. Are you a superhero? Keanu let out a soft laugh, shaking his head. No, kid. I'm just a man who couldn't look away. That's all it takes sometimes. Caleb leaned against him again, his tiny voice drifting off. I still think you're a hero. Emma's eyes met Keanu's in the mirror, a quiet promise passing between them, a promise to never go back, to never believe the lies that once chained her to that dark place. She drove on, the highway, stretching ahead like a blank page waiting to be written on. Hours later, they reached the safe house, a small, weathered farmhouse at the edge of a forest, surrounded by wildflowers and birdsong instead of barbed wire and threats. An old friend of Keanu's met them at the gate. No questions asked, just a warm blanket for Emma, a hot cup of cocoa for Caleb, and a quiet room where they could rest for the first time in forever. Keanu sat on the porch while they settled inside, his bruises throbbing, his eyelids heavy, but his heart light in a way it hadn't felt in years. He watched the sun climb higher, birds darting through the trees. Somewhere inside, Emma curled up next to Caleb, her arm wrapped tight around him, a protective shield no one would ever break again. When Emma stepped onto the porch later, her eyes were soft but clear. She sat beside Keanu, the morning breeze, tugging at her hair. "You saved us," she whispered. Keanu shook his head, a tired smile touching his lips. "No, you saved each other. I just stood with you." Emma reached out, her hand resting over his. "How do we ever repay you?" Keanu looked out at the trees swaying in the morning light, the warmth of her hand a quiet reminder that sometimes the smallest touch could heal the deepest wounds. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "Just live, be happy, teach Caleb that he's not his past. That's all the thank you I'll ever need." Emma nodded, a single tear rolling down her cheek, but this time it carried no fear, only relief, only hope. They sat in silence, to people who were strangers only yesterday, but now bound by something stronger than blood or fame. A simple truth, that kindness was a power that didn't need cameras or scripts or stage lights. I needed someone to say, "I see you, and you are not alone." And as the day stretched open before them, Keanu Reeves felt a quiet promise settle deep in his bones. He would keep standing, keep fighting, keep being the man who never looked away when someone needed him to see. And somewhere down the long road ahead, he knew that maybe, just maybe, the world would learn to do the same.